south, those two nations, Israel and Judah. And while Judah would last another century, when Israel's carried off into captivity, they would still be judged with Assyria and then carried off into Babylonian captivity. We remember Sennacherib's boasting about taking 46 fortified cities of Judah. They would suffer immensely. I mean, it would just be that Jerusalem would be left, which is a blessing as God showed mercy and delivered them in the time of Hezekiah, but they would nevertheless be greatly decimated in most parts. So it's concerning Samaria and Jerusalem. He says, "Hear, all you peoples, listen, O earth, all that is in it." So he is calling the rest of the nations to witness. You remember in Amos chapter 1 how Amos began? Who does he speak of concerning God's judgment? Foreign nations, right? He'll get to Judah and Israel, but he starts off with all these surrounding nations that are pagan, that are idol nations, and he judges them, and we emphasize God's sovereignty. And it's no different here, but here's what's happening. He is using his own people as an example to the world about his sovereignty. It's not just that he's sovereign in the sense that, oh, I'm going to judge everyone even though I don't identify with them. He's sovereign in the sense of he's even going to judge his people. And that's an important thing for everyone else to understand. In 1 Peter, speaking of a context of suffering by the hands of persecutors, Peter would explain that the time has come for judgment to begin at the house of God. And in that context, he's meaning this judgment based on all of this persecution that they're receiving. That they are going through trials now. And then he says, if it begins with us first, what will be the end of those who do not obey the gospel of God? If we've got to go through fire to get to heaven, what's going to happen with those who hate God in that whole process? Eternal fire is the answer. But he's saying, listen, everybody, look what I'm doing to my people. Let the Lord God be a witness against you, the Lord from his holy temple. He's holy. That means you've got to be holy. Not just everyone in the world is going to answer to him, but his own people are going to answer to him. So he speaks in obviously symbolic language representing destruction, as the prophets usually do. He's coming out of his place, verse 3. He's going to tread on the high places of the earth. The mountains are going to melt under him, and the valleys will split like wax before the fire, like waters poured out of it down a steep place. All this is for the transgression of Jacob and for the sins of the house of Israel. What is the transgression of Jacob? Is it not Samaria? What are the high places of Judah? Are they not Jerusalem? And so what are the high places he mentions there in verse 3 that I'll mention other times as well?
They're like the stands they put them on, wood stands or whatever they built up to put them higher than everybody else.
Sure. So, I mean, it denotes pride for sure, right? It's usually associated with the idolatrous shrines or altars, the places of idol worship, right? Which is them exalting themselves against God. For sure, you see it there in verse 5. What are the high places of Judah? Are they not Jerusalem? Which is, it should be extremely dramatic to read something like that, because what's supposed to be Jerusalem? What is Jerusalem supposed to be all about? That's the place of what? It's a temple. It's Jehovah. He's coming out of his place. The Jew would think he's coming out of Zion in Jerusalem, right? He's in the temple. It's a place of worship devoted to him. It's the place that he set apart for his name to dwell. And in Jerusalem is idolatry. And that's why they're being judged. So Jerusalem and Samaria being the capitals of the nation of Israel and of Judah. Because the very leaders, as we'll see throughout, and that's kind of what the capital city represents. It's so goes the capital, so goes the nation, right? And there is idolatry in the capitals. And it kind of represents the corruption of the people. It's laced through and through with idolatry and immorality and all kinds of problems. So he says in verse 6, I will make Samaria a heap of ruins in the field, places for planting a vineyard, and pour down her stones into the valley, and uncover her foundations. All her carved images will be beaten to pieces, and all her pay as a harlot shall be burned with the fire. All her idols will lay desolate, for she gathered it from the pay of a harlot, and they shall return to the pay of a harlot. And so you remember in Hosea especially vividly, the lovers that Israel would talk about are the idols, Baal. And what did they attribute to the idols? What did they say the idols did for them? They gave them all this wealth. They did all this for them. So they're doing really well, and it's no different at this point in time. I mean, by the time the Assyrians invade and destroy Israel and affect Judah, I mean, things are great. Economically, things seem fine. They're good. And they kind of are complacent because they're trying to, pay tribute and stuff to Assyria and kind of appease them. So they think they're fine. And they attribute all that to the idols. All that you have is from harlotry. And it's going to end up like that as well. There's going to be destruction. There's going to be condemnation. And the idols themselves are going to be right there with it. They're not going to deliver you. So they're depicted in other texts that we've studied as even being carried off into captivity as well. They won't carry you and save you, but they're going to be carried away, showing their own impotence. And so this is especially focusing on Israel, that is, verse 6, Samaria being the capital. Comments, questions on any of that? Yes, sir.
Well, it shows the arrogance of man that they're worshiping idols that they created.
Yeah.
Where we're worshiping God that created us.
Exactly.
And they're worshiping, and putting all that faith, which really means that they're putting faith in themselves.
Yeah.
And not,
It's so foolish. And they should know better. I wonder, the psychology of it, how they got so deep in it, because you can imagine as they're building this idol and they're initially trying to do this, they know that it's just material. It's not a real God, and they know who their God is and that He is the one and only true God and stuff. But you think about it, they set that idol up and then they start worshiping it because they want to worship in their own way. They want to do what they want. And then things that are good start happening. Hey, we're prospering. There might be something to this. And so it's hard to fathom that they would go from the Exodus and all the wonders God showed them and the signs that they ended up forgetting and not being thankful for, to believing that this lump of metal is giving them all of this. And that's how deceitful the heart can be. And God's going to show them, look, all it is a lump of metal. And you're going to find that out in the most difficult ways.
Well, and the devil doesn't tempt me with drugs and alcohol because I'm not tempted by that. There's other ways that he can tempt me.
Yeah. He knows our weaknesses. Yeah.
He's working in his way.
Definitely. Yes, sir.
Chairman, it reminds me of a lesson you've done not too long ago. This verse 2 just means a lot to me. Is the idea that of Jesus, of God, in His dwelling place. And it's almost like a reminder in verse 2. If you have forgotten where God dwells, and I think that's exactly what he's trying to say here about his temple. You don't even recall where God is. That's how far you have gone. And don't forget, even though you're not dwelling where God is, that you are still responsible for His judgment. And I think sometimes with your lesson this morning that you gave to us, that we forget about that. Is that we forget where God in judgment dwells, and we think about what we want to do or where we want to be, and we need to be reminded of His holy place, of His righteousness, and that there is responsibility.
Yeah.
And judgment will occur, whether we want it or not. Judgment's going to occur.
And that shows the great necessity of their judgment, because you think about it, if the Israelites are saying, we've got this temple to the one and only true God, and He's holy and He's wonderful, and yet we're committing all these abominations, they might be wondering, what's going on here? Those aren't adding up. God's got to defend His holiness. And if that means we're in the way of that, then that's just what's got to happen. If we were following him faithfully, like we'll see in chapter 2 in a minute, his prophetic word would not be our destruction, but our exaltation. That's a great point. All right, so in verse 8, you've got the prophet now. This is how he feels about it. I think we would do well to always remember this, that the true prophets of God did not, out of delight, pronounce judgment upon their own brethren. They hated having to do that. It was not a wonderful thing. It was just something they were obligated to do. And they are mourning because of it, much like the Apostle Paul in Romans 9 and 10. He says, I will wail and howl and go stripped and naked and make a wailing like jackals and a mourning like the ostriches. So they have all these understandings of these animals and these sounds, and that's how he's saying, I'm going to show you how bad this is going to be. And he says, for her wounds are incurable. It has come to Judah, it has come to the gate of my people, to Jerusalem. In Jeremiah 3, and I'll just reference it, Jeremiah later on than Micah, during that Babylonian captivity, explains to the people in Jerusalem that you didn't learn from Israel. You just went and played the harlot like she did. Everything that happened to her first was ultimately God's provision of mercy to you so that you could avoid doing what they did. But you just did the same thing and got worse. And so he's saying, it's incurable in Israel. They're far beyond any help. It's just going to happen now. But that sickness has gotten all the way up to Jerusalem. And you're sick as well. And you're going to be punished as well. So in verse 10, he begins to list these towns off. And we noted in the introduction that these are towns that kind of are encircling the hometown of Micah, of Moresheth, that is Gath. And we see that in verse 10. And what it represents is all these cities of Judah ultimately, like Sennacherib boasted, that are going to be destroyed when Assyria comes through. They take Israel captive, and certainly Jerusalem will be spared, but as Isaiah 8 says, that overflowing water will reach all the way up to the neck of his people. It will be, they'll be encircled and besieged, and then God would deliver them, but it would come all the way up to Jerusalem. And there's a play on words with this that is not immediately discernible to our eye, but you kind of see it in footnotes, but also if you have a tool to click on the language and see the Hebrew word and its definition given by lexicographers, it becomes more apparent. But in verse 10, he says, tell it not in Gath, weep not at all. Gath is a word which means to tell. And so tell it not in the place that is named to tell. There's going to be sad news that they would receive as well. And then in Beth Aphrah, roll yourself in the dust. Beth Aphrah means house of dust. And so it represents sorrow and it represents shame. Verse 11, pass by in naked shame, you inhabitant of Shafir. Shafir means beautiful, but that's in contrast to naked shame. So the town is called beautiful, but you will be in the shame of your nakedness. And then he says, the inhabitant of Zon does not go out. Zon means going out. But they don't go out. They're shut up, but they're going to go out. They're going to be led out, ultimately in captivity. Beth Ezel is a phrase which means the house of narrowing, and it says its place to stand is taken away from you. So it's getting too narrow to even stand. So you're living up to your namesake. It's going to be bad for you as well. The inhabitant of Maroth pined for good. Maroth means bitterness. And they're longing for something that is good. And of course, they're not going to see any goodness because they have turned away from the Lord. Disaster came down from the Lord to the gate of Jerusalem. As I understand it, I don't actually understand it, but scholars say it kind of breaks from that in verse 13. And the play on words is actually with the sound of the Hebrew. And I'm not going to even attempt to imitate that. But when he says, O inhabitant of Lachish, harness the chariot to the swift steed. She was the beginning of the sin of the daughter of Zion. For the transgressions of Israel were found in you. The play is on the words and their sound there. In what way Lachish was the beginning of the sin of the daughter of Zion is not fully understood, but Lachish was just close to Egypt, and it's very possible on the border of Judah and toward Egypt. It's very possible that that beginning of sins might have been that they received chariots and horses and that kind of gifting from Egypt. And the Old Testament expressly states that you shall not have that, and you shall not trust in that. You trust in God. And that would corrupt and influence the rest of the people to put their trust in places like Egypt instead. And he says, harness those chariots to the swift steeds. You need to get away quick. People are coming. The idea is not that you can escape, but you're going to be destroyed. He says in verse 14, therefore you shall give presents to Moresheth Gath. That means possession of Gath. And the New American Standard Bible kind of shows it more literally what is there in the text. Therefore you will give parting gifts on behalf of possession of Gath, Moresheth Gath. That is, you're going to not possess it anymore, but give it away. And the person that you're giving it to, of course, is Assyria. He says the houses of Akzib shall be a lie to the kings of Israel. And so Akzib means a lie. And so it's not going to be theirs anymore. You don't actually possess it. They're not your house. It's going to be given to another. I will yet bring an heir to you, O inhabitant of Mareshah. So not Maresheth, but Mareshah now different. Meaning inheritance. And I'm going to give it to someone else. Someone else is the heir, not you. So all of these play on words is just showing that destruction is coming. The glory of Israel shall come to Adullam, verse 15. Adullam means refuge or cave. They would have to hide in a cave. It would get really bad. They would need to seek refuge because of the destruction coming on. And then verse 16 invites everyone to do what the prophet's doing. I should not be the only one sorrowful. I should not be the only one anxious about this time. Y'all should be shaken too. So he says, make yourself bald and cut off your hair because of your precious children. Enlarge your baldness like an eagle, for they shall go from you into captivity. You're going to be judged. It's inevitable. And so you better wake up and be prepared. Anything on that? All right, chapter 2 and 3 really get into specific sins. And they're not unique, are they, to what we've been studying. We're talking about paganism and idolatry, certainly. We're talking about a lack of brotherly love. You have these leaders in Israel that God is entrusting His people to, and He's telling them, you rule by my law, and you make sure that justice is upheld, and that mercy and compassion are shown to the less fortunate. You provide for them. You know, the epitome of righteousness is in your ability helping those who have inability. When Job defends his own righteousness, he speaks about being a father to those who are without fathers, and to be a provider for those who are widows. And he's going to pluck the victim out of the teeth of the predator. And so that's Job's defense for him being righteous, is going to this idea of helping those who are less fortunate, and in his ability and wealth and power to aid those who need it. And that's the complete opposite of what we're seeing with the people of God. It's not just that they don't know right religion. They don't know God at all. They don't know His character, and they're certainly not living in fellowship with Him. So someone read verses 1 and 2 of Micah 2.
Woe to those who devise iniquity and work out evil on their beds. At morning light they practice it, because it is in their power with their hand. They covet fields and take them by violence. Also houses and seize them. So they oppress a man and his house, man and his inheritance.
Thank you. We alluded to this in the introduction, but what does that sound like in Israelite history? Something that happened, years and years before this. But Ahab, and what did he do?
Took the field.
Yeah, there's a man named Naboth, and he really liked his vineyard. He was kind enough to ask him first. When Naboth said, "How could I give you the inheritance that the Lord allotted to me and my family?" which more on that in a minute. Says, how could I do this? And Ahab went home like a petulant child. And Jezebel said, look, you're the king, just take it from him. And so they raised false accusations against him, had him murdered, and he took his field. That's basically a divine commentary on what Micah is saying here. Devising iniquity. That is, this is not just crimes of opportunity. They are premeditated. And they're just, in fact, it's interesting. He says they work out evil on their beds. So in the place that they're supposed to rest, they're still working, and their work is evil. They're working and thinking. They don't even sleep. They just can't stop thinking about that little man's field and the fact that it's not mine yet, and I want it. And then when morning comes, they go take it. They carry out their plans. Why? Because it's in their power. They have ability. So of all the people that could have done that to Naboth, Ahab was number one. He had the most power. If he wanted something, he had the power to take it. But what is the power given them for? These leaders, kings, rulers. Yeah, for good. Yes, you have ability. Yes, God has blessed you with authority. Yes, God has blessed you with wealth. But all of that is merely a tool for His glory and for the service of your brethren. They're coveting, and they take those by violence. Now, he says they oppress a man in his house and a man and his inheritance. So this is not simply even interpersonal sins. It's before God, and that's true with all sins. But in the Old Testament, God allotted these lands to each family, and it stayed in that family. So Leviticus 25:23 says, "The land shall not be sold permanently, for the land is mine. You're strangers and sojourners with me." Numbers 36:7 says, "The inheritance of the children of Israel shall not change hands from tribe to tribe, for every one of the children of Israel shall keep the inheritance of the tribe of his fathers." And so when Ahab says, "Naboth, I'd love your vineyard," he says, "The Lord, Yahweh, forbid that I should give the inheritance of my fathers to you." That is against the law. It's not just wrong at an interpersonal level, but this activity, in addition to showing a lack of love and concern for their fellow man, treating them like dirt, it treats God like dirt. It says, God, even though you say this is your land, it's in my power to take it from me. And you're not going to stop me. Your people can't stop me. I'm in control. The corruption is so deep. Anything on that, DJ?
Also, when I talk about working on people on their beds, that would be a time of, at the end of your day to reflect upon becoming better or changing.
Yeah.
And I think it's another one of those signs of you're either on the path of good or you're on the path of evil.
Yeah.
Because if it's going to either consume your mind at all times, or there's going to be realizations that you're checking yourself to consider your ways. And if not, then you're going to be wrapped up in doing that evil thing that even when you lay down to bed and you probably should reflect, it's going to just consume that too.
Yeah, the lesson you preached several weeks ago when I was gone from Proverbs, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. We got to be careful about how we're thinking and what we're thinking about, because it translates. You might be thinking it's just an innocent thought. I'm not really going to do it. But if you keep meditating on it, that's what you will do. Your heart, out of your heart proceed the issues of life. They translate to action. So God, through Micah, says bad things are going to happen to you. I'm devising disaster against this family, the family of Judah, the people of God, which connects back, and we'll see it in a minute, but back with this idea of family inheritance. So you destroy his inheritance. I'm devising disaster against your family, and you're not going to walk haughtily anymore. You're going to be humbled, and you're not going to be able to remove your necks from this yoke. You're going to bear it. You'll be a proverb will be spoken against you. The American Standard Bible says they will take up a taunt against you. You're going to lament. We're utterly destroyed. And then notice, verse 4, he has changed the heritage of my people, how he has removed it from me. To a turncoat he has divided our fields, that is, to a faithless one, or to an apostate, one who has turned away. Therefore you will have no one to determine boundaries by lot in the assembly of the Lord. And so you've taken inheritance from people. God's going to take all your land away from you. And you're not going to possess it anymore. The heritage he promised you, that he blessed you with, is going to be no more. This is his land. You defiled it, and now he's purging it. And that's kind of the idea. So how do they respond to this? Verse 6. Do not prattle or do not preach, you say to those who prophesy. So they shall not prophesy to you. They shall not return insult for insult. It's ubiquitous among those who know the language that these two verses have a pretty great difficulty in the Hebrew. So there might be various views of this, but the New American Standard Bible translates verse 6. Do not speak out, so they speak out. That is, they say, don't speak out. But if they do not speak out concerning these things, reproaches will not be turned back. So even if the prophet said, okay, I won't talk about it anymore, it's not going to make it not come true. That's not going to reverse the prophecy. And so in verse 7, it seems that the prophet replies, you who are named the house of Jacob, is the Spirit of the Lord restricted? Are these his doings? Do not my words do good to him who walks uprightly? And the answer is no, no, yes. So he's not restricted or narrowed. It's not like he's being short with you or he hasn't been there for you. He's not restricted from helping you. These are his doings. Should have been yes, sorry. And his words do good to those who walk uprightly. But that contrast, notice with verse 8. Lately, it would be good for those who walk uprightly, but lately, my people have risen up as an enemy. You're enemies of my people, you're enemies of me. And he explains furthermore their corruption. To the extent they pull off the robe with the garment from those who trust you as they pass by like men returned from war. So they're treating their own people like foreigners that are coming through the land returned from war. Remember in Obadiah how Edom treated his brother Israel when they had been plummeted and hurt. They kind of took the spoils as well. They took advantage of their weaknesses. Saying you're doing that to your own brethren, treating them like stragglers from war. And they trust you and you steal from them. And then we highlighted in the introduction on Wednesday that they even cast women out of their house and make children homeless. And it says they take away my glory forever. That is all that I have given them, their houses, their inheritance that is meant to be used to my glory. You've taken away their very opportunity and ability with those things to bring glory to me, which is their purpose. And so terrible, terrible things are happening. Verses 10 and 11 further the judgment that they have defiled the land, and that is their rest. It's not their rest. It should have been, but it's not. They've defiled it, and so it will be destroyed. And if a man would walk in a false spirit and speak a lie, verse 11, saying, I will prophesy to you of wine and drink, even he would be the prattler of his people. You'd love to hear that, wouldn't you? Because right now, all that's coming out of God's mouth is destruction. And they would pay people to prophesy falsely. So before getting into chapter 3, there is a very brief burst of light and a messianic prophecy. Randy gets to enjoy the majority of those in Micah. But here in verses 12 and 13, we see something positive. He says, I will surely assemble all of you, O Jacob. I will surely gather the remnant of Israel. I will put them together like sheep of the fold, like a flock in the midst of their pasture. And they shall make a loud noise because of so many people. The one who breaks open will come up before them. They will break out and pass through the gate and go out by it. The king will pass before them with the Lord at their head. So the captives will return, the remnant that is faithful, and their strength of voice answers to their strength of number. There's many people, and they're being led by the breaker, the one who breaks forth, the one who breaks out, the one who breaks down the walls of captivity and breaks down the walls of separation between Jehovah and his people, the one who has power to break. It's ironic, isn't it? The one that has power to break, they did not trust, so he broke them. But the ones who learned their lesson, he will use his strength to break the enemy and bring them back. And so it's just a wonderful glimpse into that future And the ultimate fulfillment is not even in the physical return, but in the Messiah taking his kingdom. And as we'll see in chapter 4, people from all other nations coming to the mountain of the house of the Lord to learn from him, to beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks, and to work for the Lord together and not against each other. So wonderful glimpse, and it doesn't last long because chapter 3 really gets back into the carnage that is evident in Judah. Anything on chapter 2? Yes, sir.
There's nothing new under the sun. Even today, and we find ourselves, even as Christians, fighting against this, is we want all the blessings and none of the work. And what's being said in chapter 2, especially in 6 and 7, that's not justice. Justice is not getting everything and you doing nothing.
Yeah.
That's not how life works. That's not how Christianity works. That's not how God works. You are responsible.
You know, it's the idea that I don't do anything and God blesses me tremendously. It contradicts the whole idea of how God's trying to bless us. He's trying to bless us with him, with his presence, with a relationship with him, which involves, in any relationship, there's two parts. And even if it's a relationship that is, purely unmerited, that the other person doesn't deserve the goodness of the main person or whatever, Jehovah to Israel, it still involves their activity, or else it's not a relationship. It's not that, God's going to shower you with blessings just so that you can just forget about him. And so it's unjust, and it's just without logic, but also it just contradicts the very essence of his blessings, right? Scott?
And if you've had to hit rock bottom to find the Lord, you've been blessed by hitting rock bottom, and all the bad things that have happened to you have been your greatest blessing.
Yeah. We're really going to see that in Habakkuk when he's struggling with the idea that the righteous are being oppressed by the unrighteous in Judah. And God says, the way I'm fixing it is to bring something that will hurt all of you. and what the just are going to have to continue to do, as they've been doing, is live by faith. And it will turn out as a blessing. Anything else? All right, chapter 3. Before I read verses 1 through 3, it's like, well, here's the rating, so just beware. Viewer discretion advised. But I was reminded of the way that the Jews reacted to Jesus' words in John 6. Eat my flesh and drink my blood. How'd they feel about that? Totally offended. Barbaric. Unheard of. Cannibalism. And they were just not understanding a spiritual point, that you consume me in discipleship, you follow me, and you abide in my words, and you take that into yourself so that Christ is living in you, and you'll have life, because that is life. Here it's kind of the opposite. You know this is an abomination. You know this is unheard of. This is awful, but it's what you're doing. So he says, "Hear now, O heads of Jacob, and you rulers of the house of Israel. Is it not for you to know justice? That is, this is what you should be doing. But you hate good and love evil. You strip the skin from my people and the flesh from their bones, who also eat the flesh of my people, flay their skin from them, break their bones, and chop them in pieces, like meat for the pot, like flesh in the cauldron. You're eating and eating and eating and eating, and the food is your own brethren. You're consuming them. And you're doing that as an abuse of your power. You ought to be using that for justice, but instead you're using it to oppress." And so he had talked about how bad things are going to happen in chapter 2, but now he says when they do because of your evil, they will cry to the Lord, but he will not hear them. He will even hide his face from them at that time, because they have been evil in their deeds. You might remember in Hosea 5, before you get to the false repentance of chapter 6, he said, they're going to go out and seek me, but they won't be able to find me. And then they say, oh, we're repenting. And he says, no, I'm not believing that. It's obvious that you're not. I desire mercy and not sacrifice, the knowledge of God, rather than burnt offerings. So they're going to seek me when it gets bad, but it's not because their hearts have changed. It's because they're desperate, and their idols can't help them. But they're not going to find me. I'm not even going to listen to them. It's incurable, as chapter 1 said. So he says concerning the prophets, so there's the heads, now there's the prophets, other spiritual leaders that are doing nothing like God tells them to. They chant peace while they chew with their teeth, but they prepare war against the one who puts nothing in their mouth. So if you feed me, I'll tell you good things. But if you don't pay me, you don't feed me, I'm not going to speak peace to you. I'm going to speak calamity. So he says, you'll have night without vision and darkness without divination. The sun shall go down on the prophets, and the day shall be dark for them. The seers shall be ashamed, the diviners abashed. Indeed, they shall all cover their lips, for there is no answer from God. I don't think that speaks to any legitimacy from any divinations they have. It's not like they're actually seeing things. It's not like they're actually receiving prophetic utterances. But they always have an answer. They always have something to say. They always have something to tell. But what about when all of your proclamations of peace and prosperity are circling the drain because Assyria is marching you off to captivity? It's going to shame you. People are going to see that you're a fraud. People are going to see that you never ever were a true prophet. And it doesn't matter what you say after that point. They're not going to listen to you. It means nothing. God is shutting you up. And certainly any real answer is not going to come for God anymore. So, in contrast to the false prophets in verse 8, Micah says, truly I am full of power by the Spirit of the Lord, and of justice and might, to declare to Jacob his transgression and to Israel his sin. So my words mean something because they're from God. And I'm not going to shut up about it either. Hear this, verse 9, you heads of the house of Jacob and rulers of the house of Israel, who abhor justice and pervert all equity, who build up Zion with bloodshed and Jerusalem with iniquity. So all this building up of the nation, all the prosperity, all the great things that are happening, how did it get there? It was built by bloodshed and not by justice and equity. So he gives the threefold corruption of leadership in verse 11. Her heads judge for a bribe. You should be judging for justice. That's your motivation. But your motivation is money, so justice is nowhere to be found. Her priests teach for pay. The priests, aside from the sacrifices, their primary job, according to law, was teaching the people the law. And they would only teach if they were paid. But their whole existence is to teach. And then he kind of switches it up. The prophets divine for money, not prophesy for money. And so now they're not just doing what they're told to do, but they're receiving pay. But it's a perversion of it. It's idolatry. Yet they lean on the Lord and say, is the Lord among us? No harm can come to us. Therefore, because of you, Zion shall be plowed like a field. Jerusalem shall become heaps of ruins, and the mountain of the temple like the bare hills of the forest. So they're complacent, even though they're doing all these things. For some reason, they think that they're good. The Lord's among us. But in reality, they're against the Lord. And so that mountain of the temple that you're trusting in, you're leaning on the Lord. I'm doing all of this, but the temple's right here. That's going to be decimated. And so you're going to be shown just how far away from God you are. And notice that contrast with chapter 4 when he says the mountain of the Lord's house, the true temple, the true kingdom of God is going to be established for eternity. And so that kind of sets us up to get into chapter 4. That will happen Wednesday, Lord willing. So I appreciate your time and attention, and be ready for chapter 4 Wednesday.